The billionaire's once lonely foster daughter thought her past was buried like forgotten ashes, until a familiar face from the foster care home lit up her world again. Her heart raced like a drumbeat of destiny as she stood frozen, staring at the friend who had once been her only ray of light in the darkness. Chelsea's sparkling cider glass slipped from her trembling fingers the moment she saw her, Vanessa, still wearing that same haunted smile, helping serve at the charity gala as a volunteer, as if the last 3 years hadn't happened at all. The Bellingham Estates charity gala sparkled like something from a fairy tale. All crystal chandeliers and elegant evening were flowing across polished marble. Chelsea Matthews Gibson stood at the edge of the grand ballroom, her deep purple dress, custom-tailored by her father's favorite designer, flowing around her small frame like liquid starlight. At 14, she had learned to navigate these elite spaces with the careful grace of someone who knew she was always being watched, always being judged as a reflection of her father's choices. Her natural hair was styled in an elegant updo that had taken her stylist 2 hours to perfect, tiny diamonds woven through her coils like captured stars. She touched the delicate gold necklace at her throat, a gift from Ryan for her last report card, all A's that had made him beam with pride. "You look absolutely radiant, sweetheart," Ryan Gibson said, approaching with that warm smile that had first melted her defenses 3 years ago. His hand settled gently on her shoulder, still careful, still asking permission even after all this time. "Are you ready for your speech?" Chelsea nodded, straightening her shoulders. Tonight, she would address Seattle's most influential philanthropists about her father's new initiative, the Second Chance Foundation, dedicated to reforming the foster care system. At 14, she was the youngest speaker they'd ever had, but Ryan insisted her voice mattered most. She was living proof that love could transform lives. "I've been practicing with Ms. Rodriguez," she said, her voice carrying the polish that 3 years of private tutoring and speech therapy had provided. But underneath the sophistication, Ryan could still hear echoes of the terrified 11-year-old who had flinched every time adults raised their voices. "You don't have to be perfect, Em," he said softly, crouching down slightly so they were eye to eye. "Just be yourself. That's who I fell in love with." The word love still made her chest tight with wonder. Ryan Gibson, tech billionaire, Time magazine's Person of the Year, owner of half of Seattle's skyline, had chosen her. Not because she was easy or convenient or photogenic for his image, but because something in her broken pieces had called to something in his own carefully hidden wounds. Chelsea was one of only a handful of black faces in the ballroom, something she'd grown used to but never quite comfortable with. The stares followed her wherever she went, some curious, some calculating, all wondering if she truly belonged in Ryan Gibson world or if she was just his latest charitable project. But Ryan never let those whispers reach her. He built walls of love around her so high that most of the world's cruelty bounced off harmlessly. Most of it. Across the city, in the cramped group home she shared with 7 other foster kids, Vanessa Singh was carefully braiding her blonde hair into a tight French braid. Her hands shook slightly as she worked. They always did when she was nervous, but she'd gotten good at hiding it. "You sure you want to volunteer at that fancy thing?" asked Jessica, her bunkmate, looking up from the homework she was struggling to finish by the light of a flickering desk lamp. The group home's overhead bulb had burned out 2 weeks ago, and Mrs. Patterson kept saying she'd fix it when she had time. Vanessa forced a smile, checking her reflection in the cracked mirror above their shared dresser. The volunteer coordinator had said to dress professionally, which for Vanessa meant her only clean blouse, white, secondhand, too big in the shoulders, and her least worn pair of dark jeans. "They're serving dinner to homeless kids after the fancy part," she said quietly. "I thought maybe I could help." It was partially true. The Second Chance Foundation Gala did include a service component where local foster children would be invited to share a meal and hear about educational opportunities. But what Vanessa didn't tell Jessica was that she'd seen Chelsea's picture in the newspaper article about the event. Chelsea Matthews Gibson, the billionaire's daughter, poster child for successful adoption. Chelsea. Her Chelsea. The girl who used to hold her when the nightmares got too bad. Who shared her last pieces of candy when their foster parents forgot to buy groceries. Who promised they'd find each other again, no matter what. 3 years of silence. 3 years of watching from afar as Chelsea's life transformed into something from a fairy tale, while Vanessa remained trapped in the same gray world they'd both tried so hard to escape. At 14, Vanessa looked older than her years, sharp cheekbones carved by too many hungry nights, green eyes that had learned to hide every emotion, pale skin that rarely saw sunlight because she spent most of her free time working odd jobs for spending money. The group home provided basics, but basics didn't cover the little things that made you feel human. The Bellingham estate was only 30 minutes by city bus, but it might as well have been another planet. As Vanessa walked through the volunteer entrance, clutching her permission slip and trying not to gawk at the opulence, she felt the familiar clench in her stomach that came with entering spaces where she didn't belong. Crystal chandeliers that cost more than the group home's annual budget. Designer gowns that could fund college educations. And the laughter, God, the laughter was different here. Light and careless, the sound of people who had never wondered if they were loved. "You're one of our teen volunteers?" asked Mrs. Hamilton, the coordinator, appearing at her elbow with a clipboard and a kind but hurried smile. "Wonderful. You'll be helping serve refreshments during the cocktail hour, then transitioning to help with our youth dinner afterward." Vanessa nodded, accepting the simple black apron that marked her as help rather than guest. She'd done this kind of thing before. Volunteering was one of the few ways to get out of the group home and see how the other half lived. But as she lifted her tray of sparkling cider and stepped into the ballroom proper, something prickled at the back of her neck, a sensation she hadn't felt in 3 years. But as she lifted her tray of sparkling cider and stepped into the ballroom proper, something prickled at the back of her neck, a sensation she hadn't felt in 3 years. The feeling of coming home. Of being close to the only person who had ever really seen her. Chelsea was mid-conversation with a tech executive's wife about her favorite subjects in school when her world tilted sideways. There, weaving between the clusters of donors with a tray of sparkling cider, was a ghost made flesh. Same sharp cheekbones, same careful way of holding her shoulders like she was ready to either fight or flee. Same small scar running from her left temple to her jawline, a souvenir from the Morrison house, where foster kids were seen as burdens rather than blessings. The sparkling cider slipped from Chelsea's numb fingers, crystal exploding against marble in a sound that seemed to echo through dimensions. Conversations paused. Heads turned. But Chelsea saw only Vanessa, frozen 20 feet away like a deer caught in headlights. Their eyes met across the ballroom. Across 3 years of silence, of unanswered letters, of dreams that had withered in the dark, and time collapsed like a house of cards. Vanessa. Her best friend. Her sister. Her other half, left behind in hell while Chelsea ascended to heaven. The girl who used to braid her hair when Chelsea's hands shook too badly to do it herself. Who shared her meager portions when their foster parents forgot to make enough dinner. Who whispered stories in the dark to chase away the monsters that wore human faces. Chelsea's carefully constructed world began to crumble at the edges, and all she could think was, she's still so thin. She's still so scared. She's still alone. The crystal shards glittered like broken promises at Chelsea's feet, but she couldn't look away from Vanessa's face. 3 years collapsed into nothing. Suddenly she was 11 again, holding Vanessa's hand in the dark of their shared foster bedroom, promising they'd never be separated. "I have to," Chelsea whispered to Ryan, not finishing the sentence, not even sure what she meant to say. Her small legs moved without permission, carrying her through the sea of designer gowns and tailored suits like she was swimming through molasses. Vanessa's tray trembled in her hands. The sparkling cider glasses clinked together like wind chimes in a storm. She watched Chelsea approach, this vision in purple silk and gold, this stranger who wore their shared past like a secret, and felt her chest crack open. Run, her survival instincts screamed. Run before she sees what you've become. But her feet stayed rooted to the marble floor, because this was Chelsea. Her Chelsea. The girl who used to sing lullabies in a voice like honey. Who made up fairy tales where foster kids got happy endings. Who promised they'd find each other, no matter what. Vanessa. Chelsea's voice broke on the name, barely audible above the cocktail party chatter. She stopped 3 feet away, close enough to see the new hollowness in Vanessa's cheeks, the way her collarbone jutted sharp beneath her borrowed blouse. Close enough to smell the generic soap from the group home showers, so different from her own expensive French lavender body wash. "Miss Matthews Gibson?" Vanessa's voice was steady, polite. A stranger's voice. "Would you care for some sparkling cider?" The formal address hit Chelsea like a physical blow. She flinched, and Vanessa saw it, that same little recoil Chelsea used to make when their foster parents started yelling. Some things, apparently, never changed. "Don't," Chelsea whispered, her 14-year-old voice cracking with 3 years of suppressed pain. "Please don't call me that." Vanessa's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing the girl underneath, still 11 in her heart, still waiting for rescue that never came. "What should I call you then?" "Princess Chelsea?" "Your Royal Highness." The words were meant to wound, and they did. Chelsea's face crumpled like tissue paper, and suddenly she was crying right there in the middle of Seattle's most exclusive charity gala. Her carefully applied makeup tracked down her dark cheeks in silver rivers, and she didn't care who saw. "I looked for you," she choked out, her voice thick with tears and desperation. "I wrote letters. I called every group home in 3 states. They said you'd been moved, but no one would tell me where." "I know." Vanessa's voice was so quiet it almost got lost in the ambient noise. "I got some of them. Before I was transferred again." The admission hung between them like a lit fuse. Chelsea's breath caught. "You what? You got them and you never? Why didn't you write back?" Vanessa's composure shattered like the crystal glass Chelsea had dropped. The tray slipped from her trembling hands, sparkling cider and glass exploding across the marble in a cascade of destruction. Several adults gasped. Mrs. Hamilton rushed forward with apologies and towels. Someone muttered about the help being clumsy. But Vanessa barely noticed. She was looking at Chelsea, really looking at her for the first time. At the gold bracelet on her wrist that probably cost more than Vanessa's group home saw in a month. At the way her natural hair was styled perfectly, the way she stood like someone who had never doubted she was wanted. "Because," Vanessa whispered, and her voice carried 3 years of abandoned hope, "what was I supposed to say? Congratulations on your new daddy? Thanks for the postcards from paradise while I was getting moved from house to house." The words hit Chelsea like bullets. She staggered backward, her small frame shaking, barely feeling Ryan's gentle hand on her shoulder when he appeared at her side. "Chelsea? Sweetheart, what's wrong?" His voice was gentle but concerned, and when he looked between her and Vanessa, understanding flickered in his eyes. He'd heard enough of Chelsea's stories to recognize the signs of her past walking back into her present. "This is Vanessa," Chelsea said, her voice hollow and young and broken. From before. My sister." Vanessa laughed, but it was a bitter sound that didn't belong in a 14-year-old's throat. "Sister? Is that what we're calling it now?" She looked at Ryan, really looked at him, taking in the expensive tuxedo, the kind face, the protective way he positioned himself slightly in front of Chelsea. "You must be the billionaire who saved her." There was no gratitude in her voice. Only bitter recognition of everything she'd never had. "I'm Ryan," he said gently, crouching down so he was closer to their eye level. He didn't extend his hand. Chelsea had taught him that traumatized kids needed to control physical contact. "You must be the Vanessa I've heard so much about." Vanessa's eyes widened slightly. She talks about me?" "Every day," Ryan said simply, and the quiet honesty in his voice made Vanessa's chest hitch. Chelsea wiped at her tears with the back of her hand, smearing her makeup but not caring. "I kept your picture," she whispered. "The one from the Morrisons' house, where we're making those friendship bracelets. I keep it on my nightstand, and every night her voice broke completely. "Chelsea," Vanessa breathed, and for the first time in 3 years, she sounded like herself. Like the girl who used to count Chelsea's freckles when she couldn't sleep. "You really looked for me?" "Every single day," Chelsea sobbed. "I made Daddy put detectives on it. I made him call social services. I made him promise we'd never stop trying to find you." The word Daddy hit Vanessa like a physical blow. Chelsea had found a father. A real one, who looked for lost little girls and dried tears and made promises he kept. Around them the gala continued, but the three of them existed in a bubble of raw truth that made the air feel electric. Mrs. Hamilton was frantically cleaning up glass and apologizing to guests, but Ryan waved her concerns away with the casual power of someone who probably funded half the charities in the room. "I have to go," Vanessa said suddenly, looking around for an exit, for escape, for anywhere but here. "Mrs. Hamilton will be angry if I don't." "No." Chelsea's small hand shot out, catching Vanessa's wrist. The contact was electric, skin touching skin, present meeting past. "Please. Don't go. Not again. I won't survive it again." Vanessa looked down at Chelsea's manicured fingers wrapped around her wrist, at the desperation in her touch. For a moment, she was 11 again, memorizing Chelsea's face the night before the social workers separated them. Chelsea had cried then too, making the same desperate promises about staying together, about finding each other. Promises that had felt like lies when the silence stretched on for months. "Why now?" Vanessa asked, and her voice was barely a whisper, young and raw and scared. "Why do you get to care now?" Chelsea's grip tightened. "Because I never stopped caring. Because every night for 3 years, I've prayed that you were okay. That you were safe. That you—" Her voice broke. "That you didn't hate me for getting saved when you didn't." The question hung in the air between them, weighted with 3 years of survivor's guilt and abandoned love. Around them, Seattle's elite discussed tax write-offs and vacation homes, oblivious to the fact that 2 foster kids were bleeding their hearts out on the marble floor. Vanessa looked at Chelsea, really looked at her. Saw past the silk and gold to the girl underneath, the one who used to wake up screaming from nightmares. Who used to count Vanessa's heartbeats in the dark to make sure she was still alive. Who used to split her meager portions of food because sharing meant caring, and caring meant family. That girl was still there, buried under 3 years of privilege and therapy and unconditional love. Still there, still hurting, still guilty about being the one who got chosen. "I need some air," Vanessa whispered, feeling 14 and terrified and so very tired. Chelsea nodded, not letting go of her wrist. "Come with me. Please." And as they walked toward the French doors that led to the terrace, Ryan following at a respectful distance, neither of them noticed the way conversations died and started again around them. The way Mrs. Hamilton was wringing her hands and looking between them and her clipboard. The way some of the guests stared at the scene unfolding, a black girl in designer clothes and a white girl in a volunteer apron, both of them crying like their hearts were breaking. They only saw each other, 2 survivors of the same war, finally face to face after 3 years of wondering what if. The emotional bomb had been dropped. Now came the fallout. The estate's terrace stretched out like a marble dreamscape, overlooking Seattle's glittering skyline. Chinese lanterns swayed gently in the evening breeze, casting dancing shadows across the stone balustrade. Chelsea led Vanessa to a quiet corner, away from the other guests who had spilled outside for air and gossip. Ryan lingered near the French doors, close enough to intervene if needed but far enough to give them space. He'd learned from Chelsea's therapy sessions that sometimes the most healing conversations happened when adults stepped back and let children find their own words. Chelsea finally released Vanessa's wrist, immediately missing the contact. They stood facing each other, 2 14-year-old girls separated by 3 years and a universe of experience, neither knowing how to bridge the gap. "You look—" Vanessa started, then stopped, shaking her head. "God, you look like a princess." Chelsea's face crumpled. "Don't say that. Please don't say it like it's a bad thing." "Isn't it?" Vanessa's voice carried a sharp edge that made Chelsea flinch. "Look at you. Look at this place. Look at him." She gestured toward Ryan. "You got everything we used to dream about, and I got more of the same. That's not fair, Chelsea whispered, but even as she said it, she knew Vanessa was right. Life hadn't been fair to either of them, but it had been monumentally unfair to Vanessa. Fair. Vanessa laughed, but it was hollow. You want to talk about fair? Fair would have been them taking both of us. Fair would have been you remembering where you came from once you got your fancy new life. I never forgot. Chelsea's voice rose, drawing glances from nearby adults. Ryan shifted closer, but didn't intervene. How can you say that? I wrote you letters every week for 6 months. 6 months, Vanessa repeated flatly. And then what? You got busy with your new school? Your new friends? Your new daddy who could actually afford to feed you? Each word was a knife, precisely aimed at Chelsea's deepest fears. The guilt she'd carried for 3 years bloomed fresh and sharp in her chest. It wasn't like that, Chelsea said, but her voice lacked conviction. Because hadn't there been times when she was so happy in her new life that hours passed without thinking of Vanessa? Hadn't there been moments when the pain of missing her best friend felt inconvenient, something to be pushed down so she could enjoy dinner with Ryan or celebrate a good grade? Then what was it like? Vanessa challenged, crossing her arms over her thin chest. Tell me what it was like when you stopped writing. When you stopped calling. When you let me disappear. Chelsea was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the city lights. When she finally spoke, her voice was small and honest and devastating. I was 11, Vanessa. I was just a kid, and I was so tired of hurting all the time. When Ryan adopted me, it was like finally being able to breathe. And missing you hurt so much that sometimes I couldn't breathe again. So I tried not to think about it. The admission hung between them, raw and terrible and true. You tried not to think about me, Vanessa repeated, and her voice was dead calm, which was somehow worse than anger. No, that's not. Chelsea scrambled for the right words. I tried not to think about the pain. But you were always there, Vanessa. You were in every good thing that happened to me because I wanted to share it with you. You were in every bad dream because you weren't there to chase the monsters away. Vanessa's composure cracked slightly, but she rebuilt it quickly. 3 years of disappointment had taught her not to hope too easily. Pretty words, she said. But where were you when I aged out of the Hendersons' house and got moved to Riverside? Where were you when Mrs. Patterson decided I was too difficult and shipped me to Maplewood? Where were you when, her voice broke, and she turned away, wrapping her arms around herself like armor? Where was I when what? Chelsea asked softly, stepping closer. It doesn't matter, Vanessa said quickly. Too quickly. Vanessa, please. Where was I when what? When I tried to run away, Vanessa whispered, so quietly Chelsea had to strain to hear. When I was 12 and ended up sleeping in a park for 3 days before the police found me. When I was so stupid and desperate that I thought maybe if I could just get to your house, maybe your new dad would take me too. Chelsea's breath caught. You tried to find me? I made it as far as Bellevue before they caught me, Vanessa said, still not turning around. Spent 2 weeks in juvie. Mrs. Patterson said I was acting out for attention, and that's when they moved me to the stricter group home. The words hit Chelsea like physical blows. While she'd been learning to play piano and attending private school and calling Ryan daddy, Vanessa had been sleeping in parks and getting arrested and being shuffled from home to home like unwanted baggage. I didn't know, Chelsea whispered. I swear I didn't know. If I had. You would have what? Vanessa spun around, and now her eyes were blazing with 3 years of suppressed anger. Convinced your precious daddy to take in another broken kid? Asked him to rescue the friend you'd already forgotten about. I never forgot about you. Chelsea shouted, and this time several adults definitely stared. Ryan took a step forward, but Chelsea held up a hand to stop him. This was her fight. How can you think I forgot about you? Because you stopped looking. Vanessa shot back. Because you got comfortable in your new life and decided that finding me was too hard or too complicated or too inconvenient. That's not true. Then why didn't you find me sooner? Vanessa's voice cracked with pain. If you really kept looking, if you really cared, why did it take 3 years and random chance for us to see each other again? Chelsea opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. Because Vanessa was right, wasn't she? If Ryan really had the resources to find anyone, if Chelsea really had made it her top priority, wouldn't they have found Vanessa by now? I was a kid, Chelsea said weakly. I trusted the adults to handle it. The social workers said they were looking, and Ryan hired investigators, but they kept hitting dead ends. Dead ends, Vanessa repeated. That's what I became to you. A dead end. No, Chelsea said fiercely. Never. You were never that. But even as she said it, doubt crept in. Had she really pushed hard enough? Had she really made it clear to Ryan how important finding Vanessa was? Or had she gotten caught up in the intoxicating feeling of being wanted, of being chosen, of finally having a family that didn't hurt her? Vanessa saw the doubt in Chelsea's face, and something in her own expression hardened. You know what the worst part is, she said quietly. For the first year, I defended you. When the other kids said you'd probably forgotten all about me, I told them they were wrong. I said Chelsea would never abandon me, that we were sisters, that we promised each other. She laughed bitterly. I was such an idiot. You weren't an idiot, Chelsea said desperately. You were right. We are sisters. We did promise each other. Sisters don't disappear for 3 years, Vanessa said coldly. Sisters don't get to live in mansions while their family sleeps in group homes with broken heaters and moldy bathrooms. Sisters don't wear designer dresses while their family wears donated clothes that never fit right. Each word was calculated to wound, and they did. Chelsea felt herself shrinking, becoming smaller under the weight of Vanessa's pain and anger. I know it's not fair, she whispered. I know I got lucky and you didn't, and I hate that. I hate it so much it makes me sick sometimes. But not sick enough to actually do something about it, Vanessa said. Not sick enough to really fight for me. The accusation hung in the air between them, and Chelsea couldn't deny it because there was truth in it. She had gotten comfortable. She had let the adults handle it while she focused on healing, on thriving, on becoming the daughter Ryan deserved. Behind them, Ryan watched with growing concern. He could see Chelsea spiraling, could see her taking on guilt that wasn't entirely hers to carry. But he also understood that this conversation needed to happen, that 3 years of suppressed grief and anger had to come out somehow. I tried to let you go, Vanessa said suddenly, her voice softer but no less devastating. After the first year of no letters, no calls, no visits, I tried to convince myself that you were better off without me dragging you down. That maybe your new family didn't want reminders of where you came from. Chelsea's heart shattered. That's not. But I couldn't, Vanessa continued, as if Chelsea hadn't spoken. I couldn't let go because you were the only good thing that ever happened to me. You were the only person who ever made me feel like I mattered. So I kept hoping, kept waiting, kept believing that someday you'd come back for me. Tears streamed down Chelsea's face. I wanted to. I swear I wanted to. But you didn't, Vanessa said simply. And now here we are, 3 years later, and you're shocked to see me serving drinks at your fancy party. Like I'm a ghost from your past instead of someone who's been waiting for you to remember she exists. The words settled between them like stones, heavy and unmovable. Chelsea wanted to argue, wanted to explain, wanted to make Vanessa understand that it wasn't that simple. But how could she explain the complexity of trauma and healing to someone who was still drowning in it? How could she justify moving on when Vanessa had been left behind? I'm sorry, Chelsea whispered, and the words felt inadequate, too small for the magnitude of what had been broken between them. Vanessa stared at her for a long moment, studying her face like she was memorizing it again. So am I, she said finally. I'm sorry I believed in you. I'm sorry I thought you were different. And I'm really sorry that seeing you again reminded me just how alone I really am." She turned to walk away, and Chelsea felt panic rise in her throat. "Wait," she called. "Please don't go. We can fix this. We can." But Vanessa was already walking back toward the French doors, back toward the world where she served while others were served, back toward the life that Chelsea had escaped and left her to face alone. Chelsea stood on the terrace, surrounded by beauty and privilege and love, and felt more broken than she had in 3 years. Because sometimes the people we hurt most are the ones we love most. And sometimes love isn't enough to bridge the gap that survival creates. Chelsea stood frozen on the terrace, watching Vanessa's retreating figure disappear into the crowd of gala guests. Panic clawed at her chest, the same suffocating fear she'd felt 3 years ago when the social worker had gently but firmly separated them at the county office. "Not again," she whispered, then louder, "not again." She bolted after Vanessa, her designer heels clicking frantically against the marble. Ryan called her name, but she didn't stop. She couldn't lose Vanessa again. Not when she'd just found her. Not when there was still so much to say, to explain, to fix. "Vanessa, wait." Chelsea pushed through the crowd of adults, earning disapproving looks as she squeezed between couples and nearly knocked over a waiter carrying champagne flutes. She caught up to Vanessa near the main entrance, where Mrs. Hamilton was directing volunteers to help with the youth dinner setup. Vanessa was reaching for her purse, a worn canvas bag that had seen better days, clearly planning to leave. "You can't go," Chelsea said breathlessly, grabbing Vanessa's arm. "Watch me," Vanessa replied, but her voice lacked the fire it had held on the terrace. Now she just sounded tired. Defeated. "Miss Singh." Mrs. Hamilton appeared beside them, clipboard in hand and concern creasing her forehead. "Is everything all right? You look upset." Chelsea's mind raced. She looked around desperately and spotted Ryan approaching through the crowd, his expression a mixture of worry and determination. An idea formed, crazy and impulsive and possibly brilliant. "Mrs. Hamilton," Chelsea said quickly, "this is my sister Vanessa. She's been volunteering tonight, but I was hoping, could she maybe join me for the youth dinner portion? As my guest instead of as help?" Mrs. Hamilton blinked, clearly confused by the family dynamics she was witnessing. "Well, the youth dinner is specifically for current foster children, and we already have our volunteer assignments." "But she is a current foster child," Chelsea pressed. "She's at Maplewood Group Home. She qualifies as a participant, not just a volunteer." Vanessa's eyes widened. "Chelsea, what are you doing?" "Please," Chelsea said, turning to Mrs. Hamilton with a kind of earnest desperation that adults found hard to refuse. "We haven't seen each other in 3 years. The whole point of tonight is helping kids like us, right? Can't you help us too?" Ryan arrived just in time to hear Chelsea's plea. He looked between the girls, quickly assessing the situation, then turned to Mrs. Hamilton with a kind of smile that had charmed CEOs and politicians for years. "Mrs. Hamilton, isn't it?" he said warmly. "I'm Ryan Gibson, Chelsea's father. I couldn't help but overhear. Is there a problem with accommodating both girls for the dinner portion?" Mrs. Hamilton's demeanor shifted immediately at the recognition. This was, after all, Ryan Gibson, the man whose donation had funded half the evening's initiatives. "Of course not, Mr. Gibson," she said quickly. "I was just explaining the logistics, but we can certainly make arrangements. Miss Singh, if you'd like to join the other young people for dinner, we'd be delighted to have you as a participant." Vanessa looked trapped, her eyes darting between Chelsea's hopeful face, Ryan's gentle encouragement, and Mrs. Hamilton's expectant smile. The truth was, she hadn't eaten a real meal in 2 days. The group home's food budget had been stretched thin again, and dinner tonight consisted of peanut butter sandwiches and generic fruit cups. She started, then stopped. Her stomach chose that moment to growl audibly, betraying her hunger. Chelsea heard it, and her heart broke a little more. "Please," she said softly. "Just dinner. Then if you still want to leave, I won't stop you. Vanessa stared at her for a long moment, weighing pride against practicality, anger against hunger. Finally, she nodded stiffly. Fine. Dinner. Then I'm gone. Mrs. Hamilton beamed. Wonderful. The young people are gathering in the West Wing dining room. Mr. Gibson, will you be joining us? If that's all right, Ryan said, but he was looking at the girls, reading the delicate balance of the situation. I'd love to meet some of the other children. 20 minutes later, Chelsea and Vanessa found themselves seated at a round table with 6 other foster kids, ages ranging from 12 to 17. The West Wing dining room was smaller than the main ballroom but no less elegant, with warm lighting and round tables set with real china and cloth napkins. Chelsea felt desperately out of place in her designer dress among kids wearing their best donated clothes, but she tried to smile and make conversation. Vanessa, meanwhile, sat rigidly beside her, barely speaking and clearly planning her escape route. So you two know each other? Asked Marcus, a lanky 16-year-old with kind eyes and paint-stained fingers. From before. We were at Morrison House together, Chelsea said carefully. 3 years ago. Before you got adopted, said Jasmine, a 12-year-old with intricate braids and a suspicious expression. Must be nice, having a billionaire daddy. Chelsea flinched. It is, she said honestly. I'm really lucky. Luck, Vanessa muttered under her breath, but loud enough for everyone to hear. An uncomfortable silence settled over the table. The other kids looked between Chelsea and Vanessa, sensing tension but not understanding its source. What's it like? Asked David, a quiet 14-year-old who'd been picking at his salad. Living in a real family. Chelsea glanced at Vanessa, then back at David. How could she explain the miracle of unconditional love to kids who'd never experienced it? How could she describe the safety of knowing someone would always come home to you, always fight for you, always choose you? It's... She started, then stopped. It's everything we used to dream it would be. The simple honesty of her answer hit the table like a small bomb. Some of the kids leaned forward hungrily, desperate for details. Others, like Vanessa, seemed to retreat further into themselves. Does he really care about you? Asked Jasmine. Or is it just for show? For his image? He cares, Chelsea said firmly. He sits with me when I have nightmares. He learned to braid my hair even though he'd never done it before. He keeps pictures of my art projects on his office wall, even the terrible ones from when I first came home. Home, Vanessa repeated quietly, and there was so much pain in that one word that Chelsea's chest tightened. Tell them about Christmas, Ryan's voice came from behind them. He'd been circulating among the tables, talking with the kids and the social workers, but he'd obviously been listening to their conversation. Chelsea's face lit up despite the tension. Last Christmas, Daddy found out I'd never had a real Christmas tree. So he bought the biggest one he could fit in the house. It was like 15 feet tall, and we spent an entire weekend decorating it. He let me put the angel on top even though I had to stand on a ladder. He gave me 17 presents, Chelsea continued, her voice growing softer. Not expensive things, I mean some were expensive, but thoughtful things. A photo album with pictures of us together. A locket with his picture inside. Books by authors who looked like me. He said. Her voice caught. He said he wanted to make up for all the Christmases I'd missed. The kids at the table absorbed this story with the hunger of children who'd never experienced that kind of love. Even Vanessa was listening, though she tried to hide it behind her mask of indifference. What about you? Marcus asked Vanessa gently. What was Christmas like at your place? Vanessa's jaw tightened. We got a donated ham and some toys from the fire department. Same as every year. The contrast was stark and painful. Chelsea felt the familiar guilt wash over her, survivor's guilt, her therapist called it. The weight of being chosen when others weren't. The system is broken, said Sarah, a 17-year-old who'd clearly aged out mentally even if she hadn't officially yet. Some kids get fairy tale endings, others get shuffled around until they're too old to matter anymore. It doesn't have to be that way, Ryan said quietly, taking an empty seat at their table. His presence was both comforting and intimidating. Here was a man who could solve problems with money and influence, sitting among children whose problems felt insurmountable. Doesn't it? Vanessa challenged, looking directly at him for the first time all evening. You saved one kid. Congratulations. What about the rest of us? Ryan didn't flinch from her anger. You're right to be angry, he said simply. The system failed you. It failed Chelsea too, before I found her. And it's failing thousands of other children right now. So what? Vanessa demanded. You going to adopt all of us? Start collecting foster kids like Pokemon cards. Vanessa, Chelsea said sharply, but Ryan held up a gentle hand. It's a fair question, he said. And the answer is no, I can't adopt everyone. But I can try to change the system that creates situations like this. That's what tonight is about, raising money and awareness to reform foster care, to provide better training for foster families, to ensure kids aren't shuffled around like unwanted packages. Pretty words, Vanessa said, echoing her earlier dismissal of Chelsea. But words don't keep you warm at night when your foster dad decides you're too much trouble. The table fell silent. Even the other conversations in the room seemed to quiet, as if everyone sensed the weight of the moment. You're right, Ryan said finally. Words aren't enough. Action is what matters. He pulled out his phone, typed something quickly, then showed the screen to Mrs. Hamilton, who had appeared at his elbow with a concerned expression. What are you doing? Chelsea asked, confused. Ryan looked around the table, his gaze settling on each child's face before returning to Vanessa's suspicious green eyes. I'm making sure no one leaves hungry tonight, he said simply. Mrs. Hamilton, could you arrange for transportation home for everyone who needs it? And... He paused, seeming to make a decision. And could you give me the contact information for each child's caseworker? I'd like to discuss some immediate improvements to their living situations. The kids stared at him in shock. Chelsea felt her heart swell with pride and love for this man who had saved her and was now trying to save others. But Vanessa just looked more suspicious. Why? She asked bluntly. What's in it for you? Ryan considered the question seriously. 3 years ago, I met a little girl who was broken in ways I couldn't imagine. She was angry and scared and convinced she wasn't worth loving. I took her home not because I wanted to fix her, but because something in her reminded me of myself, the parts of me that felt lost and alone despite all my success. He looked at Chelsea with such tenderness that several of the kids sighed. She changed my life more than I changed hers, he continued. She taught me what family really means. And now I can't sit at a table with children who are living the nightmare she escaped and not try to help. But you can't save everyone, Vanessa said, though her voice had lost some of its edge. No, Ryan agreed. But I can try to save some. And I can try to make the system better for the rest. Vanessa stared at him for a long moment, clearly trying to find the catch, the angle, the way this would benefit him and hurt her. But she couldn't find it, and that scared her almost more than the anger had. I should go, she said, standing abruptly. Mrs. Patterson expects me back by 10, and the buses stop running. I'll have my driver take you home, Ryan said immediately. I don't need charity, Vanessa snapped. It's not charity, Chelsea said quickly, standing too. It's family. Family takes care of each other. We're not family anymore, Vanessa said, but there was less conviction in her voice than before. Yes, we are, Chelsea said firmly. We've always been family. The only family that ever mattered. The other kids watched this exchange like a tennis match, sensing drama but not fully understanding the undercurrents. Mrs. Hamilton approached with a gentle smile. The transportation is arranged, Mr. Gibson. And I have those contact numbers you requested. Vanessa looked around the table at the faces watching her, curious, hopeful, kind. She looked at Ryan, who was offering help without expecting anything in return. She looked at Chelsea, whose eyes were bright with unshed tears and desperate hope. She was trapped, and they all knew it. Trapped by kindness, by the possibility of something better, by the girl she'd once loved more than anyone in the world. "Fine," she said finally, sitting back down heavily. "I'll take the ride. But that's it. Tomorrow everything goes back to normal." Chelsea reached over and squeezed her hand, and this time, Vanessa didn't pull away. "Okay," Chelsea said softly. "Normal." But as the dinner continued and Ryan asked gentle questions about their lives and dreams, as the other kids slowly opened up about their hopes and fears, as Vanessa found herself laughing despite her determination to stay angry, everyone at the table knew that normal was the last thing any of them wanted. Sometimes being forced together was exactly what broken people needed to start healing. Even if they didn't realize it yet. The ride to Maplewood Group Home was silent except for the soft hum of Ryan's Tesla and the occasional sniffle from Chelsea, who was trying not to cry in the back seat. Vanessa sat rigidly beside her, staring out the window at the passing streetlights, while Ryan drove with the careful attention of someone navigating more than just traffic. He was navigating the delicate emotional minefield his daughter's past had suddenly become. "Turn left here," Vanessa said quietly as they approached a neighborhood that grew shabbier with each block. The manicured lawns and tidy houses gave way to cracked sidewalks and peeling paint, chain-link fences and cars that had seen better decades. Chelsea pressed her face to the window, taking in a world she'd almost forgotten existed. 3 years of privilege had softened the sharp edges of her memories, made them feel like scenes from a movie rather than her actual life. But seeing Vanessa's reality brought it all rushing back, the constant uncertainty, the gnawing hunger, the way hope became a luxury you couldn't afford. There, Vanessa pointed to a large institutional-looking building that might have once been white but had faded to a depressing gray. "That's home sweet home." Ryan pulled into the cracked parking lot, studying the building with the eye of someone who'd made his fortune solving problems. The windows were barred for safety, he was sure they said, and half the exterior lights were burned out. A sign hung crookedly by the front door, "Maplewood Group Home, a safe haven for youth." "Jesus," he murmured under his breath, then caught himself. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean." "It's okay," Vanessa said with bitter amusement. "Even Jesus would have opinions about this place." Chelsea reached for the door handle, but Vanessa stopped her with a sharp look. "You can't come in," she said. "Residents only after 9 p.m. Security rules." "But," Chelsea started. "Besides," Vanessa continued, her voice gentler now, "you don't want to see inside. Trust me." She was right, and they all knew it. Chelsea had worked too hard to heal from her own trauma, to willingly walk back into the environment that had created it. But the guilt of leaving Vanessa here, in this place that looked like a prison disguised as a home, made her stomach churn. "Vanessa," Ryan said suddenly, turning in his seat to face her. "Can I ask you something?" She shrugged, hand on the door handle but not yet opening it. "When Chelsea was 11, the night before she came to live with me, do you remember what happened?" Chelsea's breath caught. They'd never talked about that night, not in detail. It was too painful, too raw, even after 3 years of therapy. Vanessa's mask slipped completely, revealing the scared little girl underneath. "Which part?" she whispered. "The part where you made her promise to forget about you," Ryan said gently. Chelsea's head snapped up. "What? Vanessa, you never." "I did," Vanessa said, and her voice was barely audible. "The night before you left Morrison House, after lights out. You were crying and saying you didn't want to go, that you wanted to stay with me. And I..." Her voice broke. "I told you to forget about me. I told you to be happy with your new family and not look back." The words hung in the car like smoke, heavy and suffocating. Chelsea stared at Vanessa in shock. "Why?" she whispered. Vanessa laughed, but it was hollow. Because I loved you, you idiot. Because you were getting a chance at something better, and I didn't want you to waste it being sad about me. But I wrote letters anyway, Chelsea said, confused. I tried to find you. I know, Vanessa said, wiping at her eyes with the back of her hand. And every letter broke my heart a little more because I thought you'd actually listen to me for once in your life. Ryan watched this exchange with growing understanding. So when the letters stopped coming, I thought she'd finally taken my advice, Vanessa finished. I thought she'd finally chosen happiness over me. Chelsea was crying openly now, her careful makeup long since ruined. I could never choose happiness over you. You are my happiness. You always were. Then why did the letters stop? Vanessa asked, and there was so much pain in her voice that Ryan felt his own chest tighten. Chelsea looked at Ryan, then back at Vanessa. Because they told me you were dead. The words fell like a bomb in the enclosed space of the car. Vanessa's face went white. What? 6 months after I came to live with Daddy, Chelsea said, her voice shaking, I was still writing letters, still asking him to hire investigators to find you. The social worker, Mrs. Singh, not related to you, different Singh, she came to the house for one of my check-ins. I asked her about you, like I always did. Chelsea's voice grew smaller, younger. She said there had been an incident at your new placement. She said you tried to run away again, but this time you've been hit by a car. She said. Chelsea couldn't finish. She said what? Vanessa whispered. She said you didn't make it, Ryan finished gently. She told Chelsea you had died from your injuries, and that's why she couldn't find you anywhere. Vanessa stared at them both in shock. But I'm not dead. Obviously. I mean, I got hurt, broke my wrist and got a concussion, but I didn't die. Why would she say that? Ryan's jaw tightened with barely controlled anger. As someone who'd built an empire on information and trust, the idea of a social worker lying to a traumatized child made him see red. I can think of several reasons, he said grimly. None of them good. So you stopped looking because you thought I was dead, Vanessa said slowly, processing this revelation. I stopped living because I thought you were dead, Chelsea corrected. For months, I could barely get out of bed. I stopped eating, stopped talking, stopped caring about anything. Daddy had to take me to therapists and doctors because they thought I might. She glanced at Ryan, then back at Vanessa. They thought I might hurt myself. The weight of this confession settled over them. 3 years of misunderstanding, of pain, of 2 girls mourning each other while both were still alive. Mrs. Singh, Vanessa said suddenly. Short woman? Gray hair? Always carried that ugly brown purse. Yes, Chelsea said. Do you know her? Vanessa's face darkened with memory. She was the one who handled my case when I got hurt. She came to the hospital and... Vanessa stopped, her face going pale. Oh my God. What? Ryan asked. She asked me about you, Vanessa said slowly. About Chelsea Matthews. She said you'd been asking about me, causing problems for your new family by being obsessed with finding me. She said it wasn't healthy, that you needed to move on. Chelsea's blood ran cold. What did you tell her? I told her. Vanessa's voice was barely a whisper. I told her that maybe it would be better if you thought I was dead. That maybe then you could be happy. The silence in the car was deafening. Chelsea stared at Vanessa with a mixture of horror and heartbreak. So she used your words, Ryan said quietly, to convince Chelsea you were gone forever. I killed myself, Vanessa whispered. I killed myself to set you free, and instead I just made us both prisoners. Chelsea reached for her then, pulling Vanessa into a fierce hug that 3 years of separation couldn't diminish. Vanessa resisted for a moment, then collapsed into Chelsea's arms like a dam breaking. I'm so sorry, Vanessa sobbed. I'm so sorry I said that. I'm so sorry I made you think I was dead. I'm so sorry for everything." "I'm sorry too," Chelsea cried into Vanessa's hair. "I'm sorry I believed it. I'm sorry I stopped fighting. I'm sorry I let you go." Ryan watched these two broken girls try to piece each other back together, and felt something fundamental shift in his understanding of family, of responsibility, of love. He'd thought saving Chelsea was his great accomplishment, his legacy. But now he realized that Chelsea had never been fully saved, not while half her heart was walking around in another broken child. "Vanessa," he said softly, waiting until she looked up at him with tear-swollen eyes. "How long have you been at Maplewood?" 2 years, she said, wiping her nose on her sleeve. "Since I was 12. It's not the worst place I've been, but it's not exactly the Ritz either." "What happens when you turn 18? He asked. Vanessa shrugged. "Same thing that happens to all of us. I age out. Get my bag of belongings and a bus ticket to wherever I want to go. Try to figure out how to be an adult when no one ever taught me how." Chelsea looked stricken. "That's only 4 years away." 3.5, Vanessa corrected. "But who's counting?" Ryan made a decision that would change all their lives, though none of them knew it yet. "Vanessa," he said carefully, "what would you say if I told you that you never had to go back into that building?" Both girls looked at him with sudden hope and terror. "What do you mean?" Vanessa asked suspiciously. "I mean," Ryan said, choosing his words carefully, "that if Chelsea's sister is still alive, then maybe it's time I met her properly. Maybe it's time she came home." The words hung in the air like a promise, like a prayer, like the answer to 3 years of desperate hope. But promises, they all knew, could be broken. Hope could be destroyed. And home was a word that had been used against them before. The question was, did they dare believe in it again? The silence in the car stretched like a held breath. Vanessa stared at Ryan with wide, disbelieving eyes, while Chelsea gripped her hand so tightly their knuckles went white. "You can't be serious," Vanessa whispered finally. Ryan turned fully in his seat to face both girls. "I've never been more serious about anything in my life." "But you don't even know me," Vanessa protested, her voice rising with panic. "I'm not like Chelsea. I'm not easy to love. I break things. I run away. I have trust issues and abandonment problems, and I don't know how to live with people who don't hurt me." "Sounds familiar," Ryan said gently, glancing at Chelsea with a small smile. "Someone else I know used to say very similar things about herself." Chelsea's cheeks flushed. It was true, she'd spent her first 6 months with Ryan waiting for him to change his mind, to send her back, to realize she was too damaged to be worth the effort. "It's different," Vanessa insisted. "Chelsea's special. Chelsea's good. I'm just—" "You're my sister," Chelsea interrupted fiercely. "You're the person who used to sing me to sleep when I had nightmares. You're the one who shared your food even when you were hungry. You're the one who protected me from Tyler Morrison when he tried to." She stopped, but they all knew what she meant. Vanessa's face crumpled. "That was a long time ago. I'm not that person anymore." "Yes, you are," Chelsea said with absolute certainty. "You're still the girl who gave me her dessert on my birthday. You're still the one who taught me how to braid friendship bracelets. You're still the one who told me stories about the family we'd have someday, with a mom and dad who would love us and never leave." "Fairy tales," Vanessa said bitterly. "No," Ryan said quietly. "Family." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone, scrolling through photos until he found what he was looking for. He turned the screen toward them, showing a picture of Chelsea's bedroom, a beautiful space done in soft purples and golds, with built-in bookshelves and a window seat overlooking the gardens. "This is Chelsea's room," he said. "But do you know what her favorite thing in it is?" Vanessa shook her head, mesmerized by the fairy tale bedroom that looked like something from a magazine. Ryan swiped to the next photo, a close-up of Chelsea's nightstand. There, in a simple silver frame, was a faded photograph of 2 little girls making friendship bracelets, their heads bent together in concentration. "She looks at that picture every night before she goes to sleep," Ryan said softly. "And every morning when she wakes up. For 3 years, she's been carrying you with her." Chelsea's eyes filled with tears. "I told you I never forgot." Vanessa stared at the photo, remembering that day. Mrs. Morrison had gotten a new camera and decided to take pictures of the foster kids for the state files. Most of the photos had been stilted and awkward, but this one had been different. Chelsea had been teaching Vanessa a new braiding pattern, and they'd been so absorbed in their work that they'd forgotten about the camera entirely. It was the last photo ever taken of them together. "You kept it," Vanessa whispered. "I kept everything," Chelsea said. "The birthday card you made me from construction paper. The rock you painted to look like a ladybug. The letter you wrote me when I had the flu, telling me all the stories you were going to tell me when I felt better." Vanessa's composure shattered completely. "Chelsea, stop." "I kept the friendship bracelet too," Chelsea continued, reaching into her small purse and pulling out a faded, frayed circle of embroidery thread. "The purple and gold one you made me for Christmas. See? I've carried it with me every day for 3 years." The sight of that simple worn bracelet, something Vanessa had made with her own hands when they were just children, broke something open in Vanessa's chest. She doubled over with the force of her sobs, 3 years of suppressed grief pouring out of her in waves. Chelsea wrapped her arms around her friend, rocking her gently like they used to rock each other in the dark moments at the foster homes. Ryan watched with tears in his own eyes, understanding more about love and family in this moment than he had in his entire 42 years of life. "I'm scared," Vanessa whispered against Chelsea's shoulder. "I'm so scared of hoping again." "I know," Chelsea whispered back. "But what if this time is different? What if this time is real?" They held each other in the back seat of the Tesla while Ryan made quiet phone calls, to lawyers, to social workers, to people who could make impossible things possible when you had enough money and determination. "Hey beautiful souls, we're at the heart of our story now. Drop a comment and tell me, have you ever had a friendship that felt like family? Someone who carried a piece of your heart even when you were apart? Let me know what's touching you most about Chelsea and Vanessa's journey so far." After what felt like hours but was probably only 20 minutes, Ryan turned back to them. "Vanessa, I need to ask you something important," he said. "Are you safe at Maplewood? I mean really safe, not just surviving." Vanessa pulled back from Chelsea, wiping her eyes with her sleeve. "Define safe. Has anyone hurt you there? Physically, emotionally, in any way?" Vanessa was quiet for a long moment. "Mrs. Patterson isn't cruel, exactly. She's just tired. There are 12 kids and 2 staff members on most shifts. We're basically raising ourselves." "That's not what I asked," Ryan said gently but firmly. Vanessa looked at Chelsea, then back at Ryan. "There was an incident last month. One of the older boys, Kevin. He's 17 and angry and bigger than the rest of us. He cornered me in the laundry room and—" She stopped, unable to finish. Chelsea's face went white. "Vanessa, what happened?" "Nothing," Vanessa said quickly. "I mean nothing bad. I had scissors from the craft room, and I convinced him to leave me alone. But Mrs. Patterson said I was being dramatic when I reported it. Said boys will be boys and I needed to learn how to handle myself." Ryan's jaw tightened dangerously. "That's not acceptable." "It's not great," Vanessa agreed. "But it's not the worst place I've been either. At the Hendersons' house, Mr. Henderson used to—" She stopped again, shaking her head. "Sorry. You don't need to hear about that." "Yes, I do," Ryan said quietly. "If you're going to be my daughter, I need to know what you've survived. I need to know how to help you heal." The word daughter hung in the air like magic. Vanessa stared at him, searching his face for signs of deception, manipulation, or the kind of false kindness that adults sometimes used when they wanted something. She found none of those things. She found only sincerity, determination, and something that looked remarkably like the expression he wore when he looked at Chelsea. Love. Protective, fierce, unconditional love. "Why?" she whispered. "Why would you want me? You already have Chelsea. You already have the perfect daughter. Why would you risk that by bringing in someone like me?" Ryan considered the question seriously. "Can I tell you a story?" Vanessa nodded. "When I was 7 years old, my little sister drowned in our neighbor's pool. I was supposed to be watching her, but I got distracted by a video game. By the time I realized she was gone, it was too late." Chelsea gasped. In 3 years, Ryan had never told her this story. "I spent my entire life trying to make up for that failure," Ryan continued. "I built companies, made money, donated to charities, but nothing ever filled the hole that losing her created. Nothing ever made me feel like I deserved to be happy when she couldn't be." He looked at Chelsea with infinite tenderness. "Until I met Chelsea. Loving her, watching her heal, seeing her become the incredible person she was always meant to be, that taught me that maybe I could deserve happiness after all. Maybe I could be the father I never got to be to my sister." Vanessa was crying again, but quietly now. "But Chelsea was never fully healed," Ryan continued. "Part of her was always missing. Part of her was always looking for you, waiting for you, hoping for you. And I realized that I can't truly give her the family she deserves unless I find the family she already had." He reached over and gently took Vanessa's hand. "You're not a risk to what Chelsea and I have. You're the missing piece that makes it complete. You're the sister she chose, the family she made when the world failed to give her one. And that makes you my family too." Vanessa stared down at their joined hands, his large and manicured, hers small and rough from too much work and not enough care. "What if I mess it up?" she whispered. "What if I can't learn how to be part of a real family? What if I'm too broken to fix?" "Then we'll figure it out together," Ryan said simply. "That's what families do. They don't give up on each other, even when things get hard." Chelsea squeezed Vanessa's other hand. "Remember when we used to plan our dream family? You said you wanted a dad who would read bedtime stories and never yell. I said I wanted a mom who would braid my hair and teach me to cook." "We were babies," Vanessa said, but she was smiling through her tears. "We were dreamers," Chelsea corrected. "And sometimes dreams come true. Just not the way we expected them to." Vanessa looked between Chelsea and Ryan, this girl who had been her whole world and this man who was offering to become her safe harbor. It felt too good to be true, too perfect to be real. But maybe, just maybe, it was time to stop waiting for the other shoe to drop. Maybe it was time to believe that she deserved something beautiful. "Okay," she whispered, so quietly they almost didn't hear her. "Okay?" Chelsea asked, hardly daring to hope. "Okay," Vanessa said more firmly. "I want to try. I want to come home." Chelsea launched herself across the seat, hugging Vanessa so tightly they both laughed despite their tears. Ryan watched his daughters, both of them now, and felt a completeness he hadn't even known he was missing. Outside the car, Maplewood Group Home loomed gray and institutional, a reminder of all the children still waiting for their own miracles. But inside the Tesla, 3 people who had found each other across impossible odds sat planning a future that suddenly seemed bright with possibility. "Can we go home now?" Chelsea asked. "I want to show Vanessa her room." "Her room?" Vanessa asked, confused. Ryan smiled. "Did you think I'd make you share? The house has 12 bedrooms. You can have whichever one you want." Vanessa stared at him in wonder. 12 bedrooms. She'd never had a room to herself in her entire life. "I want the one next to Chelsea's," she said without hesitation. "Done," Ryan said, starting the car. "Let's go home." As they pulled out of the parking lot, Vanessa looked back at Maplewood one last time. Tomorrow, she'd have to come back to get her things, to say goodbye to the other kids, to officially begin the process of leaving the system forever. But tonight, she was going home. With her sister. With their dad. After 14 years of being unwanted, she was finally, truly wanted. It felt like the best kind of magic. The drive to Ryan's estate in Bellevue should have been magical, two sisters reunited, heading toward a fairy tale ending. But as they wound through increasingly affluent neighborhoods, Vanessa felt her anxiety ratchet higher with each passing mile. The houses grew larger, the lawns more manicured, the distance from her old world more insurmountable. "Holy shit," she breathed as they turned through the electronic gates of the Gibson estate. "Language," Chelsea said automatically, then caught herself. "Sorry, I didn't mean to." "No, it's okay," Vanessa said, but her voice was tight. "I need to learn the rules anyway, right? Can't embarrass the family name." Ryan glanced at her in the rearview mirror, noting the defensive edge creeping back into her voice. He'd seen this before with Chelsea. The closer they got to safety, the more terrified she became of losing it. The house that came into view looked like something from a movie, all glass and warm lighting, modern lines softened by beautiful landscaping. It was elegant without being ostentatious, clearly expensive, but somehow still feeling like a home rather than a museum. "It's beautiful," Vanessa whispered, and for a moment her mask slipped, revealing wonder instead of fear. "Wait until you see the inside," Chelsea said excitedly. "There's a library with a reading nook, and a game room with a pool table, and the Kitsing has this island that's bigger than most of the bedrooms she stopped, realizing what she'd said. "Most of the bedrooms we used to share," Vanessa finished quietly. "It's okay, Em. I know you remember." They pulled into the circular driveway, where soft landscape lighting made everything look like a fairy tale. Ryan turned off the car and looked back at both girls. "Before we go in," he said gently, "I want you both to know that this is going to be an adjustment. For all of us. We're going to take it one day at a time, okay?" Chelsea nodded eagerly. Vanessa just stared at the house, overwhelmed. Inside, the house was even more impressive. Soaring ceilings, beautiful art, comfortable furniture that looked both expensive and actually lived in. Chelsea gave Vanessa a quick tour, chattering excitedly about her favorite spots, while Ryan made discreet phone calls to set the legal process in motion. "And this is my room," Chelsea said, opening the door to reveal the purple and gold sanctuary Ryan had shown them in the photo. But seeing it in person, Vanessa felt the gulf between their lives hit her like a physical blow. The room was bigger than the entire sleeping area at Maplewood. The bed looked like something a princess would sleep in, piled high with soft pillows and a comforter that probably cost more than Vanessa made in a year of odd jobs. Built-in bookshelves lined one wall, filled with more books than Vanessa had ever seen in one place. And there, on the nightstand in its silver frame, was the photo of them making friendship bracelets. "It's incredible," Vanessa said, but her voice sounded hollow. Chelsea frowned, picking up on the shift in Vanessa's mood. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," Vanessa said quickly. "Just tired. It's been a long day." "Of course," Ryan said, appearing in the doorway. "Let me show you the room I thought you might like." He led them down the hall to another bedroom, slightly smaller than Chelsea's but still beautiful, decorated in soft greens and blues with large windows overlooking the gardens. Fresh flowers sat on the dresser, and the bed was already made up with crisp white linens. "I had the housekeeper prepare it just in case," Ryan said. "But if you don't like it, you can choose any other room, or we can redecorate however you want." Vanessa walked slowly around the room, touching the smooth surfaces, the expensive fabrics, the kinds of things she'd only ever seen in magazines. A private bathroom with a deep soaking tub. A walk-in closet that was currently empty but bigger than some of the bedrooms she'd lived in. A window seat with soft cushions, perfect for reading. It was everything she'd ever dreamed of. And that's exactly what made it terrifying. "It's perfect," she said, but her voice was flat. Chelsea and Ryan exchanged concerned glances. "Vanessa," Chelsea said carefully, "what's wrong? I thought you'd be happy." "I am happy," Vanessa said, but she was backing toward the door. I'm thrilled. This is amazing. You're amazing. Everything is perfect and wonderful and exactly like a fairy tale. But, Ryan prompted gently. But fairy tales aren't real, Vanessa exploded, all her suppressed fear and anger finally erupting. This isn't real. People like me don't get happy endings. We get disappointed and hurt and abandoned, and I can't do this. Vanessa, wait, Chelsea started, but Vanessa was already pushing past them, heading for the hallway. I need some air, she said, practically running toward the stairs. Chelsea started to follow, but Ryan caught her arm gently. Let me, he said quietly. He found Vanessa on the front steps, hunched over with her head in her hands. She looked impossibly small against the backdrop of his massive house, like a lost child who'd wandered into the wrong story. Mind if I sit? He asked. She shrugged without looking up. Ryan settled beside her on the marble steps, his expensive tuxedo probably getting ruined, but he didn't seem to care. Want to tell me what's really going on? He asked. Vanessa was quiet for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. I don't belong here. Why not? Because look at me, she said, gesturing at herself, her donated clothes, her rough hands, her general air of having survived rather than thrived. Look at this place. Look at Chelsea. She fits here now. She's polished and educated and elegant. She knows how to be rich. I don't even know which fork to use at dinner. Chelsea didn't know either when she first came here, Ryan said gently. But she learned, Vanessa said bitterly. She adapted. She became the daughter you deserved. What if I can't? What if I'm too broken, too angry, too me? Ryan was quiet for a moment, considering his words carefully. 3 years ago, he said finally, Chelsea threw a plate at my head during dinner. Vanessa looked up in surprise. She was angry about something, I don't even remember what, and she just grabbed her dinner plate and hurled it across the room. It shattered against the wall about 6 inches from my face. What did you do? I ducked, Ryan said with a small smile. Then I helped her clean it up. Then we sat on the kitchen floor and talked about why she was really angry. And it turned out she'd overheard me on a phone call with her social worker, discussing some paperwork issues. She thought I was trying to send her back. Vanessa absorbed this story, trying to reconcile it with the poised, confident Chelsea she'd seen tonight. She threw things for the first 6 months, Ryan continued. Plates, books, shoes, whatever was handy when she got overwhelmed. She also hid food in her room, snuck out twice, and once tried to cut her own hair with kitchen scissors because she was afraid I'd think it was too ethnic. Really? Really? And you know what I learned from all of that? Vanessa shook her head. I learned that healing isn't pretty. It's not linear. And it's definitely not fast. But it's possible, if you have people who love you enough to stick around for the messy parts. Vanessa felt tears prick at her eyes. What if there are too many messy parts? What if I'm more broken than Chelsea was? Then we'll take longer to heal, Ryan said simply. There's no timeline on becoming a family, Vanessa. There's no test you have to pass or person you have to become. You just have to be willing to try. I'm scared, she whispered. Good, Ryan said, surprising her. If you weren't scared, I'd be worried. This is scary. Taking a chance on love is always scary, especially when you've been hurt as much as you have. He stood and offered her his hand. But you know what's scarier than trying and possibly failing? What? Not trying at all. And spending the rest of your life wondering what might have been. Vanessa stared at his outstretched hand, this lifeline being offered by a man who had no obligation to care about her but chose to anyway. Behind them, the front door opened and Chelsea appeared, her face streaked with tears. Please don't leave again, she said quietly. I can't lose you twice. I won't survive it. Vanessa looked between Chelsea and Ryan, This girl who had been her anchor and this man who was offering to be her harbor. They were asking her to trust in something she'd never experienced. Unconditional love. It should have been easy. It should have been the obvious choice. But years of abandonment and disappointment had carved fear so deep into her bones that even love felt dangerous. "What if I mess this up?" she asked, voicing her deepest terror. "Then we'll unmess it," Chelsea said simply, stepping closer. "That's what families do. They forgive each other. They try again. They don't give up." "I don't know how to be someone's daughter," Vanessa whispered. "I didn't either," Chelsea said. "But Daddy taught me. He was patient when I was angry. He was gentle when I was scared. He was there when I had nightmares. He never made me feel like I was too much trouble or not worth the effort." She looked at Ryan with such pure love that it made Vanessa's chest ache. "He'll teach you too. If you let him." Vanessa stood slowly, her legs shaking with exhaustion and emotion. She looked up at the house, this beautiful, impossible house that could be her home if she was brave enough to reach for it. Then she looked at Chelsea's tear-streaked face, at Ryan's patient expression, at two people who were willing to fight for her even when she couldn't fight for herself. "Okay," she said finally, her voice barely audible. "Okay?" Chelsea asked, hope blooming in her voice. "Okay," Vanessa said more firmly. "I want to try. I want to be your sister. I want to be his daughter. I want to come home." Chelsea launched herself forward, wrapping Vanessa in a hug that lifted her off her feet. Ryan stepped forward too, his arms coming around both girls, and for a moment they stood there on the front steps, a family that had found each other against all odds. But even as Vanessa allowed herself to be held, even as she felt the first stirrings of something that might be hope, a voice in the back of her mind whispered warnings. Too good to be true. Too perfect to last. Too much to hope for. Because people like Vanessa had learned that sometimes the cruelest trick life could play was to give you everything you'd ever wanted, just so it could take it away again. She didn't know it yet, but tomorrow would bring challenges that would test whether their newfound family was strong enough to survive the storm that was coming. For tonight, though, she let herself believe in fairy tales. Even if only for a few precious hours. The call came at 6:47 a.m., jarring Ryan awake from the first peaceful sleep he'd had in years. He fumbled for his phone, squinting at the unknown number on the screen. "Mr. Gibson?" The voice was crisp, professional, and completely unwelcome at this hour. "This is Sandra Mitchell from Child Protective Services. I'm calling regarding Vanessa Singh." Ryan sat up immediately, his heart rate spiking. Down the hall, he could hear the soft murmur of voices. Chelsea and Vanessa, who had ended up sleeping in Chelsea's room after staying up until 3 a.m. talking and planning their future together. "What about Vanessa?" he asked, keeping his voice low. "I'm afraid there's been a complaint filed regarding last night's events. Mrs. Patterson from Maplewood Group Home has reported that Vanessa left the premises without proper authorization and hasn't returned. There are also concerns about an inappropriate relationship between your family and a vulnerable minor." Ryan's blood ran cold. Inappropriate relationship? What exactly is being alleged? "I'm not at liberty to discuss details over the phone," Sandra said efficiently. "But I'll need to conduct an immediate welfare check on Vanessa, and she'll need to return to Maplewood pending a full investigation." "Investigation into what?" Ryan demanded, his voice rising despite his efforts to stay quiet. "Mr. Gibson, I understand your frustration, but the state takes these matters very seriously. A wealthy family suddenly taking interest in a specific foster child raises red flags, particularly when proper channels haven't been followed." Ryan closed his eyes, feeling the familiar weight of bureaucracy and suspicion that always seemed to follow people who tried to help children in the system. He dealt with this when adopting Chelsea, but at least then he'd gone through official channels from the beginning. "I'll be there within the hour," Sandra continued. "Please have Vanessa ready to return to Maplewood." The line went dead, leaving Ryan staring at his phone in disbelief. After everything they'd been through, After finally finding each other, some bureaucrat was going to tear them apart again. Down the hall, Chelsea's door opened and both girls appeared, still in their clothes from the night before, their hair mussed from sleep. "Daddy," Chelsea called softly. "Is everything okay? We heard you talking." Ryan looked at these two beautiful girls, his daughters, both of them, regardless of what any paperwork said, and felt his heart break. How was he supposed to tell them that their fairy tale reunion was about to become a nightmare? "We need to talk," he said gently, gesturing for them to join him in the living room. Vanessa's face went pale immediately. She'd heard that tone before, in dozens of social worker offices and foster homes. It was the tone adults used when they were about to deliver devastating news. "What's wrong?" she asked, but she was already backing toward the door, already preparing to run. "Vanessa, wait," Ryan said, reaching for her. "It's not what you think. Isn't it?" Vanessa's voice was rising with panic. "Someone's changing their mind, aren't they? Someone decided this was a mistake." Chelsea moved to stand beside Vanessa, instinctively protective. "Daddy, what's happening?" Ryan sat heavily on the couch, suddenly feeling every one of his 42 years. "There's a social worker coming this morning. Mrs. Patterson from Maplewood filed a complaint about last night. They want to take Vanessa back pending an investigation." The words hit the room like a bomb. Chelsea's face crumpled, and Vanessa just laughed. It was a bitter, hollow sound that didn't belong in a 14-year-old's throat. "Of course they do," she said flatly. "Of course. Because God forbid someone like me gets something good for longer than 12 hours. This is temporary," Ryan said firmly. "My lawyers are already working on it. This is just bureaucratic nonsense." "No," Vanessa interrupted, her voice deadly calm. "This is reality. This is what happens when people like me dare to dream above our station." She was moving toward the stairs, toward the beautiful bedroom that had been hers for less than a night. "Where are you going?" Chelsea asked, following her. "To get my stuff," Vanessa said without turning around. "Might as well make it easy for them." In the bedroom, Vanessa moved with the efficient motions of someone who'd packed her life into garbage bags more times than she could count. Her few belongings from Maplewood were still in the small backpack she'd brought with her. Everything else, the beautiful room, the soft bed, the feeling of being wanted, had never really been hers anyway. "Stop," Chelsea said desperately, grabbing the backpack. "You can't just give up. We'll fight this. Daddy will fight this." "With what?" Vanessa demanded. "Money? Lawyers? Influence? You think the system cares about any of that when it comes to protecting kids like me from people like him?" "People like him?" Chelsea's voice was sharp with hurt. "Daddy's not the enemy here." "Isn't he?" Vanessa spun around, her face flushed with anger and pain. "Rich white man suddenly decides he wants to collect another broken foster kid? You don't think that looks suspicious to people who've seen this story before?" Chelsea flinched as if she'd been slapped. "That's not what this is, and you know it." "Do I?" Vanessa challenged. "How do I know this isn't just guilt? How do I know he's not just trying to make himself feel better about saving one kid by saving another?" "Because you know him," Chelsea said desperately. "You saw him last night. You felt how much he cares." "I felt how much he cares about you," Vanessa corrected. "Everything else could be an act." The words hung in the air like poison. Chelsea stared at her best friend, her sister, and saw the fear and trauma that lived so deep in Vanessa's bones that even love couldn't reach it. "You don't mean that," Chelsea whispered. "Don't I?" Vanessa slung her backpack over her shoulder. "Face it, Em. We were kidding ourselves. People like me don't get happy endings. We get used and discarded and forgotten." "I never forgot you," Chelsea said fiercely. "I never gave up on you. Even when they told me you were dead, part of me kept hoping they were wrong." And look where that got us, Vanessa said bitterly. 12 hours of make-believe before reality came crashing back down. Ryan appeared in the doorway, his phone pressed to his ear. My lawyer says if we cooperate fully, this will be resolved quickly, he said, ending his call. Vanessa, I promise you, this is temporary. Vanessa looked at him with eyes that were far too old for her face. You can't promise that. No one can promise that. The system doesn't care about what you want or what I want or what Chelsea wants. The system cares about protecting itself. Then we'll change the system, Ryan said firmly. Vanessa laughed again, that same hollow sound. God, you really believe that, don't you? You really think your money and power can fix everything? I think love can fix everything, Ryan said quietly. Given enough time and patience and determination. Love, Vanessa repeated mockingly. You've known me for 12 hours. You don't love me. You love the idea of me. You love the way saving me would make Chelsea happy. But you don't actually know who I am or what I'm capable of. The cruelty in her voice was calculated, designed to wound. Ryan absorbed it without flinching, recognizing it for what it was, a frightened child lashing out at the people who were trying to help her. You're right, he said simply. I don't know you yet. But I know Chelsea, and I know she doesn't love easily or carelessly. If you're important to her, then you're important to me. That's how family works. We're not family, Vanessa said coldly. We're strangers who shared a moment of sentimentality. Don't confuse that with something real. Chelsea was crying openly now, her heart breaking as she watched her sister dismantle their happiness piece by piece. Please, she whispered. Please don't do this. Don't push us away because you're scared. I'm not scared, Vanessa lied. I'm realistic. I'm protecting myself. And I'm protecting you. From what? From disappointment, Vanessa said. From heartbreak. From the inevitable moment when he realizes I'm not worth the trouble and sends me back anyway. The doorbell rang downstairs, echoing through the house like a death knell. Sandra Mitchell had arrived. Ryan looked between his daughters, one biological by choice, one biological by birth but separated by circumstance. Both of them were crying now, both of them were breaking apart in front of him. I have to go answer the door, he said quietly. But Vanessa, I want you to know something. Whatever happens today, whatever they say or do or threaten, I'm not giving up on you. Ever. Do you understand me? Vanessa stared at him, searching his face for signs of deception or manipulation. She found none. Only sincerity, determination, and something that looked remarkably like the expression he wore when he looked at Chelsea. Love. Unconditional, protective, fierce love. It terrified her more than anything else could have. It doesn't matter, she said, but her voice was weaker now, less convinced. It's the only thing that matters, Ryan said firmly. The doorbell rang again, more insistently this time. I have to go, Ryan said. But Chelsea. Yes, Daddy. Don't let your sister disappear on me again. No matter what happens with the social worker, no matter what anyone says, we're family now. All of us. And families don't abandon each other. He left them alone in the bedroom, going downstairs to face whatever bureaucratic nightmare awaited. Chelsea and Vanessa stood in silence, listening to the murmur of voices from below. He means it, Chelsea said finally. When he says he won't give up, he means it. Vanessa wiped her eyes with her sleeve. How can you be sure? Because he didn't give up on me, Chelsea said simply. Even when I threw plates and hid food and tried to run away. Even when I was convinced I was too broken to love. He never stopped fighting for me. That was different, Vanessa said weakly. No, Chelsea said firmly. It wasn't. You're not different. You're not more broken. You're not less worthy. You're just scared, and that's okay. But don't let fear make you give up on the best thing that's ever happened to either of us. Vanessa looked around the beautiful bedroom one more time, at the soft bed she'd barely slept in, at the windows overlooking gardens she'd never walked through, at the fairy tale life that had been offered to her for one perfect night. Then she looked at Chelsea, her sister, her heart, her home, and made a choice that would change everything. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay. Okay, I'll stay. I'll fight. I'll try to believe that maybe fairy tales can come true." Chelsea threw her arms around Vanessa, holding her tight as the voices downstairs grew more heated. "Whatever happens," Chelsea whispered, "we're in this together." Together, Vanessa agreed, and for the first time in years, she chose hope over fear. Even if the whole world was about to try to tear them apart again. 1 month later. The courtroom was smaller than Chelsea had expected, all dark wood and serious faces. She sat in the front row behind the petitioner's table, her hands folded tightly in her lap, watching as Ryan's lawyer presented their case to Judge Martinez. Vanessa sat beside her, wearing a new blue dress that Ryan had bought for the occasion, her first court appearance where someone was fighting to keep her rather than trying to get rid of her. "Your Honor," Attorney Williams was saying, "Mr. Gibson has completed all required home studies, background checks, and psychological evaluations. The Department of Children and Family Services has found no evidence of impropriety in his relationship with Miss Singh. In fact, their recommendation supports this adoption petition." Chelsea squeezed Vanessa's hand. The past month had been a whirlwind of interviews, inspections, and bureaucratic hoops, but they jumped through every single one. Ryan had been relentless, employing a team of lawyers and social advocates while personally ensuring that every requirement was met and exceeded. Vanessa had moved back to Maplewood temporarily, but Ryan visited every day. He'd brought books, art supplies, and most importantly, consistency. When Vanessa had her inevitable meltdown in week 2, convinced this was all an elaborate cruel joke, Ryan had sat with her in the group home's cramped visiting room for 4 hours until she was ready to try again. "Miss Singh," Judge Martinez said, looking directly at Vanessa. "I'd like to hear from you directly. Do you want Mr. Gibson to adopt you?" Vanessa stood on shaky legs, her voice barely audible at first. "Yes, Your Honor." "And why is that?" Vanessa glanced back at Ryan, who gave her an encouraging nod. In the month they'd known each other, he'd become exactly what she'd always dreamed a father could be: patient, kind, protective without being controlling, and absolutely unwavering in his commitment to her. "Because he keeps his promises," Vanessa said, her voice growing stronger. "When he said he wouldn't give up on me, I didn't believe him. But he proved it every single day. Even when I tried to push him away, even when the system tried to keep us apart, he never stopped fighting for me." She paused, taking a deep breath. "And because Chelsea is my sister. She always has been, even when we were apart. Mr. Gibson, he's not just adopting me. He's putting our family back together." Judge Martinez smiled, the first genuine warmth she'd shown all morning. "Thank you, Miss Singh. Mr. Gibson, please stand." Ryan rose, his usual confidence tempered by nervous energy. This was the most important business deal of his life, and it had nothing to do with money. "Sir, do you understand the lifelong commitment you're making today?" Judge Martinez asked. "I do, Your Honor." Miss Singh has experienced significant trauma. She may require years of therapy, patience, and support. There may be setbacks, challenges, and difficulties that test your resolve. Are you prepared for that? Ryan looked back at both girls, his heart swelling with love and determination. "Your Honor, a month ago I thought I had everything I needed. A successful business, a beautiful daughter, a comfortable life. But I was wrong. I was missing this," he gestured toward Vanessa. "I was missing the other half of Chelsea's heart. Family isn't about convenience or ease. It's about showing up for each other, especially when things get hard." He turned to face Vanessa directly. "I'm not adopting Vanessa because I think it will be easy. I'm adopting her because she's already my daughter in every way that matters. This is just making it official." Judge Martinez nodded approvingly. "Very well. Based on the evidence presented, the recommendations of the Department of Children and Family Services, and the clear desire of all parties involved, I hereby grant the petition for adoption." The gavel came down with a sharp crack that seemed to echo through Chelsea's chest. She launched herself over the barrier separating them from the legal proceedings, wrapping both Ryan and Vanessa in a fierce hug. "We did it," she sobbed. "We actually did it." Vanessa was crying too, but for the first time in her life, they were tears of pure joy. "I have a family," she whispered in wonder. "I have a real family." "You always had a family," Ryan said, his own voice thick with emotion. "Now you just have the paperwork to prove it." 3 hours later, the Gibson estate. The backyard had been transformed into a celebration space, with white lights strung through the trees and tables laden with food. What had started as a small family dinner had grown into something much larger. Chelsea had insisted on inviting the other kids from the youth dinner, along with several of Ryan's friends who had become invested in Vanessa's story. Marcus, Jasmine, David, and the others from Maplewood sat around one of the tables, their eyes wide as they took in the fairy tale setting. Ryan had arranged transportation for all of them, and Chelsea was playing hostess with the enthusiasm of someone who finally had something wonderful to share. "This is insane," Marcus said, watching Vanessa laugh at something Ryan was telling her. 3 months ago, she was convinced she'd never get out of the system. "Sometimes good things happen to good people," Jasmine said wisely, though at 12, she shouldn't have needed to sound so philosophical about hope. Vanessa approached their table, still wearing her blue court dress but with Ryan's suit jacket draped over her shoulders. She looked different, lighter, like a weight had been lifted from her soul. "Hey," she said softly, sitting down beside Marcus. "I wanted to thank you guys for coming." "Are you kidding?" David grinned. "Free food and a chance to see a real-life happy ending? We wouldn't miss it." But Vanessa's expression grew serious. "I know this is weird. I know it might seem unfair that I got out when you're all still." "Stop," Marcus interrupted gently. "Don't do that. Don't feel guilty for getting something good." "But—" "Vanessa," Jasmine said firmly, "do you know what you've given us?" Vanessa shook her head. "Hope," Jasmine said simply. "You've proven that sometimes the system works. That sometimes people fight for us. That sometimes we get to be wanted." Around the table, the other kids nodded in agreement. "Plus," David added with a grin, "now we know someone with a pool. You better be ready for a lot of summer visitors." Vanessa laughed, the sound bright and free. "You're all welcome anytime. I mean it." Later that evening, as the sun set over Seattle, the party began to wind down. The other kids had been driven safely back to their placements, promises made to stay in touch. Ryan's friends had departed with warm congratulations and genuine happiness for the family's expansion. Now it was just the three of them, Chelsea, Vanessa, and Ryan, sitting on the back patio as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. "I have something for you," Chelsea said suddenly, reaching into her purse. She pulled out 2 small boxes, handing one to Vanessa and keeping one for herself. Inside were matching necklaces, delicate gold chains with small pendants. Chelsea said sister in flowing script, while Vanessa said sister as well. "I had them made," Chelsea explained. "So we'll always remember that we chose each other. Before the adoption, before daddy, before any of the legal stuff. We chose to be family." Vanessa's eyes filled with tears as Chelsea fastened the necklace around her throat. "I love it. I love you. I love you too." Ryan watched his daughters with a heart so full it felt like it might burst. 3 years ago, he'd been a successful but lonely man who'd thrown himself into work to avoid dealing with the emptiness in his life. Then Chelsea had arrived and taught him what it meant to be a father. Now Vanessa had completed something he hadn't even known was missing. "Group hug," he suggested, and both girls immediately launched themselves at him. As they sat there under the stars, wrapped in each other's arms, Chelsea thought about the journey that had brought them to this moment. All the pain, all the separation, all the fear, it had led them here, to this perfect evening when they were finally complete. Beautiful souls, as we reach the end of Chelsea and Vanessa's journey, I want to ask you something. What does family mean to you? Is it the people you're born to, or the people you choose to love? Drop a comment and share your thoughts. And if this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to believe in the power of love to heal even the deepest wounds. Do you think we'll have a normal family now? Vanessa asked quietly. Like boring dinners and arguments about chores and all that regular stuff? Ryan and Chelsea exchanged amused glances. Honey, Ryan said gently, our family will never be normal. Chelsea still has nightmares sometimes. I still work too much when I'm stressed. And you're going to have moments when you can't believe this is real and you'll try to push us away. But that's okay, Chelsea added. Because normal is overrated. What we have is better than normal. We have real. Vanessa nodded, understanding flooding through her. She'd spent so many years wanting to be normal, wanting to fit into some idealized version of family life. But maybe real was better. Maybe broken people who chose to love each other despite their scars were stronger than people who'd never been tested. I want to do something, she said suddenly, sitting up straighter. What? Ryan asked. I want to help other kids like us. Kids in the system who think they're forgotten. I want to start a program or a foundation or something. Chelsea's face lit up. Yes. We could create scholarship funds, or mentorship programs, or... Slow down, Ryan laughed, but his eyes were shining with pride. We have time to figure all of that out. But Vanessa, if that's something you really want to pursue, we'll make it happen. Together? Vanessa asked. Together, Chelsea confirmed. Together, Ryan agreed. As the evening deepened around them, the three of them began planning not just their future as a family, but their future as advocates for children who were still waiting for their own fairy tale endings. Because sometimes the best way to honor the gift of being saved is to turn around and save others. And sometimes the most broken people, when they're put back together with love, become strong enough to hold up the world. Chelsea Matthews Gibson and Vanessa Singh Gibson had found their way home at last. Not just to a house or a family, but to themselves, to the girls they'd always been underneath the trauma, to the sisters they'd always been despite the separation, to the daughters they'd been waiting their whole lives to become. In the end, love had won. Love always wins, if you're brave enough to let it. And they had been very, very brave. The end.